So I'm pretty sure we all have our ideas of what a wedding invitation should look like. Some like, a little more minimalistic ones. Some like more modern invitations. Some like the really kitschy stuff with lots of ornaments. It's a very sort of subjective thing. And what most people do is they just Google and they look for inspiration as to what they can find, what previously has been done, or some of the run-of-the-mill invitations that you'll just find off the shelf from companies like Hallmark and I don't know, whoever. But what we're going to do right now is we're first going to try to get some inspiration from Midjourney. And what you would do in order to do that is you would prompt like this. So in this specific case, I have imagine, and then I start off with wedding invitation design, then roses and vines theme, earthy and green colors, version 5.1. And I'm going to use a portrait format for this because, well, just because. Let's have a quick look what that gives us. And at the same time, I'm going to test some other prompts as well. So I'm going to go imagine, and I just made some notes here, cover of modern wedding invitation, modern wedding invitation design, realistic wedding photography, off-white paper, and rose and vine ornaments. Again, version 5.1, and I'm going to do 2.2 to 3 again. And then now I'm going to do one more just to have some variation. Cover of modern wedding invitation design, realistic wedding photography. Just a second. Whoops. Roses and vines theme, earthy and green colors again. So you see I'm mixing it up a bit just to get some variation there, because not every single prompt is necessarily most suitable to get good ideas. And of course re-roll these until you sort of get, well, obviously not every single time you prompt these the images will be the same. Every time you re-roll, you'll get new ideas, different styles. And let me move myself here to the right and we can have a quick look at some of these images. I'm going to start off with the first one that's done, which is this one with these green tones. And I think these are pretty cool. I actually like this style, but it's not very typical for a wedding. And I think most weddings would probably go for a lighter tone, such as this one, which shows us a typical off-white color. I don't know, you call that eggshell or something like that. And the floral sort of ornaments that you very often see with roses and all this sort of stuff. So this gives us some good ideas. Then we can see that the third one, which is not quite done yet, but it does look a little bit kitschy. Yeah, now it's done. I'm gonna open these real quick. And yes, this is a bit over the top. I'm sure there are couples who love these, but this is not the kind of thing that I'm looking for. So I'm not actually going to use any of these designs. However, they're giving me some ideas. I still would like to see a little bit more with photography, but I like this light style. I kind of want to work with vines and with roses, sort of a vineyard style, but this is not exactly what I want. So what we're going to do instead, of course, you could continue doing this until you get like the perfect idea, but it's very unlikely that you will get the perfect idea. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to try to build my very own. I'm going to use these a little bit as inspiration, but in the end, I'm probably going to do my own thing. So what I want to do is I want to create 2 wedding invitation cards. Nothing too crazy, nothing too complicated, but one in a portrait format and one in a sort of a landscape format. And to do that, I'm going to start off with something that's more vineyard oriented first. For that, I want an image of, let's say, wedding. I'm going to start with wedding photography just to clarify that we're going to do something about, well, that I need actual real photography style, like realistic images, and bride and groom facing each other in vineyard. Now this should be fairly straightforward. Remember, you don't need to do anything too crazy. We'll see what we get from that. And for the portrait format invitation, I'd like to do something similar, but I'm going to use a different theme. So what we'll do is bride and groom walking hand in hand into the sunset. Right, that's a nice theme. So we'll let these two finish generating, and then we'll continue in a second. Okay, so these look pretty awesome. Let's have a look at the ones for the vineyard. Yeah, these are really, really nice. We may have to do some work on the saturation and the contrast and stuff like that, but I'll probably go with the top right or the bottom right one. Now, ignore the fact that this is not an actual couple, right? Not nobody that we actually know. We're just going to use these as placeholders. Of course, you'll be using actual photography later on if you want to create a wedding invitation. The second set of images I'm not too happy with because I kind of need some how should I say this? I'm actually looking for a clearer sky. I need a lighter sort of tone in the sky. And that's why I'm going to do two things. I'm going to re-roll this just to see whether the second attempt gives us a better image. And while that's generating, I'll also try to rephrase the prompt a little bit by, let's see, clear wedding photography, bride and groom walking hand to hand into sunset, clear, bright sky. Let's see whether that makes a difference. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to make an attempt at this. Okay, so let's have a quick look at these. The first set of images up here are, they're super romantic and everything, but there's too many clouds in the sky. So for what I want to do, it's not impossible, but it's going to be a bit more difficult for me. So let's have another look at the other set of images. And when I look at these, they're easier to work with, especially the top left one. But unfortunately, I don't know whether this lens flare is that great. The top right one looks like the couple's, I don't know, in some dystopian sort of apocalyptic wasteland. Not sure about that one, but we can potentially use the bottom left one. Anyway, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to upscale something completely different. First of all, I want to get this sort of eggshell off-white color up there, and specifically that one. So I'm going to upscale that first image, wait for that to generate, and once it pops up, which should be right around now, there we go. I can copy this, copy image, and now I'm going to switch to Affinity Designer. And for this, I actually need to move myself here in the corner, otherwise you guys can't really see much. I'm going to hit New, and I'm going to use, first I'm going to create A5 format, and I'm also going to create the A5 format, sorry, not in, what am I doing here? I'm trying to get a landscape format. Why don't I have a preset? Oh, there we go. There. So now we've got, I'm actually not sure that's that great of a format for landscape. Never mind, I'm going to create a new one for this. I'm going to use web. This might be a bit too big, but it doesn't matter. So what I'll do first is I'm going to create a background here, which ironically already is in an off-white color. That's interesting. Maybe it's a better one. So what I'll do here now is I want to change the color of my background. I'm going to use this color picker here to change it to that. Now that might be a bit too warm, so I'm going to lighten that up a little bit. Next, I'm going to lock that layer just so I can't break anything. Actually, no, wait, I'm going to copy that and paste it right here for later use. Lock it. And now we'll go back to Midjourney. And now I'm going to pick, first of all, the bottom left image here. I'm going to upscale that. And from these here at the top, I will probably use the bottom right one. So these are just upscaling for a second. And next I can copy this. I'm going to get the full size version, which ironically is almost the same. I copy the image. I go back to Affinity Designer. I paste it in here. And then we increase the size, make it a little bit more big and a little bit bigger. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. It's not going to be that easy to get this to work properly. So what I want to do now is I want to get this transition here going. I'm not sure whether gradient is necessarily the best way to do this, What I can do first is I'll try to increase the brightness, but that's going to increase the brightness on everything. That might not be conducive. So instead, let me turn off that brightness for a second. I'm going to delete that layer. Why is that not working? And what I'll do instead is I'm going to rasterize this so that I can now use the pixel persona here, the pixel persona in Affinity Designer. Create a little bit bigger brush here. Whoops, sorry about that. And why can't we see the we can't see the, there we go. And now I select this, and now I'm going to slowly, and that's the bit of the problem here. It's not big enough. So the problem with creating these transitions, especially when the photo itself is pretty dark, is that it's quite difficult to get a smooth transition. So what I'm doing here is I've selected the eraser tool. I've chosen a fairly big brush, but I've reduced the opacity of that brush effect, which means that every time I go over this, it doesn't actually remove 100%, but just does like small layers. And you can fine tune this as much as you want. I've also chosen a very, very soft brush here so that you can change the hardness. And this is pretty much good enough for me. So this actually worked better than I thought. Now we could actually fix a little bit of the saturation or the brightness and contrast if we wanted to. I've done this a little bit. And next, what we'll do is we'll add some, so I've added text. I'm going to call them Mark. So Sophie and Mark, I think that's the politically correct thing to do nowadays. Name the woman first, of course. Chivalry is having a bit of a comeback. And I'm now going to choose a nice little script font. And I know you guys can probably pick much, much nicer ones. The point of this exercise is to show you what can be done and not to show you what the perfect thing would look like. So here we'll say, join us for this special day. And I'll change the font to DM Serif Display. Not sure whether this is, it doesn't matter, it's fine. And then I'll change the color of this to something, why is the color picker not opening up? There we go. To something more, I don't know what more, but something more in line with the style of what I'm creating here. I'll have to play around a little bit because you want to create something that looks like it's like high quality, right? You can also obviously make this smaller, but for the purposes of this exercise, this should be fine. Now, this is the front of the card. Obviously, you could create something that has an inlay and anything like that. For just to show you what I could do, or what we could do, is I'm going to, I wouldn't necessarily do this, but I'll show you what can be done. And we're going to say, where is this wedding taking place? So we're going to say, let's say it's on a vineyard. So we'll say we're on the, I don't know, Lucifer Vineyards. I know that's a strange name. 666 Death Valley Road in Napa Valley. And I know this does not exist, but please bear with me. I'm just trying to figure out some placeholder text. So this doesn't look all too nice the way it's written here right now. So what we'll do is add something like this. The Lucifer Vineyards, make that a little bit more bold, make it smaller, and we'll change the color to something like this. So this already looks much better than I expected, to be honest. But our card isn't done yet. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to add some elements. Why is this not centered? Let me center this for a second. Well, it is centered. It doesn't look centered. I think it doesn't look centered because of the couple down here. So what I'll do next is I'll go back to Midjourney, and what I want to create now is, imagine, let's see, a single vine branch on off-white background, 5.1, let that read. And something else that I would like to create that we'll need later on is a rose and vine wedding. How do you pronounce this? Wreath? Wreath? I'm not sure. Off-white background. Again, 5.1. Then what else do I want to create? I want to create one more style. Wait, I wrote something down here. Rose and vine ornaments on off-white background. There, and that's basically all we need. I'm gonna wait for these to all finish generating, and then we'll continue in a second. Okay, cool. Discord is being a huge pain today. I'm consistently being logged out over and over again. Anyway, so let's have a look at these vine branches, which are great. I'm going to pick two of these, the first one and the third one. We're not going to worry about these other two. We're going to be using them in a minute. So let me copy this vine. I'll just throw it in here, and let me copy the other vine, which I will also throw in here. So next up, what I'll do is I'm going to turn them around a little bit until they fit into the image the way I want them to. And next, to turn this one around. And once I have them in place, we're going to do something very, very basic, something very simple, nothing fancy. Once again, I'm going to convert them, rasterize them so that I can now switch to the pixel persona. And now I just need to make sure that I've selected them correctly. Sorry about that. And now we do the same thing. We basically erase all of the irrelevant stuff so that this blends together or blends into our card perfectly. Do the same thing here for the other side, the other vine, and then you can barely see that they're just placed on top of it because the background color already fits quite well. Now I still have an issue here on the left. So technically this would constitute a semi-decent wedding invitation card that you could use. Or you could at least give this to a proper illustrator or designer who then creates something more professional if you wanted to. But this is one way of doing it. Now let's try to do the exact same thing, but on the other card. Here, once again, I'm going to adjust the background. I'm going to keep the same off-white color, but in this case, I'm going to move everything here to the left, this bit smaller, Sophie and Mark. Here we have our address for the Lucifer Vineyards. And this time we're going to put each part of the address on one line. Make this a bit smaller. Sorry about that. And now we're not done yet. We're going to go back to Midjourney. And now we're going to grab one of these. Actually, I don't think I'm going to use this pattern here. Instead, we're going to use one of these wreaths. I'm sure one of you guys is going to comment in here, like in the comments, how to pronounce it properly. I apologize if I said it incorrect. So now I'm going to go back to Affinity Designer. I now have our ornaments here. Going to change the blending mode to average, just so that it's very, very just faint. Might move this to the right, to the left instead. Problem here is that I'm actually not that happy with this. So instead, we'll try to position it further out like this. Now I still have that problem here, again, with the border. So I'll rasterize it again, go back to my pixel persona, and now I can basically just remove this so it blends in more nicely to make the names a bit smaller. But what about the photo? We still have the photo. Remember this couple here? We're going to copy this, go back. Now, here's the trick. I am not sure whether it's better to use these ornaments in the background or the photo or both. So what we could do is, it's a bit kitschy, right? But what we could do is we could make a circular shape. It's really kitschy, but place them on top of this photo. And then I'll just move this layer on top of the image so it cuts it out. Now it's not perfectly positioned, and it might even be a bit too, so we'll make this bigger, like this. And now we can take this ornament, or wreath, or whatever, make it a bit smaller, try to center the photo on this. This is not what I had in mind originally, but I actually like this. And we're almost done. So the only thing I would probably want to do here is change the positioning of the names of Sophie and Mark So what we'll do is I'll break them into two and have Sophie and we'll have Mark. So we'll do something like this. Again, I'll remove Mark, and here I'll remove the ampersand. And this allows us to play around with these elements a bit more, have more freedom. But I think this looks really nice. So as you can see in Midjourney, you do not necessarily have to create a prompt that produces the perfect image for you straight away. And for something like this, like a wedding card, it makes absolutely no sense to do so anyway, because you're going to have to add your custom information, names, text, and photos anyway. But you can use the sorts of assets, image assets that you can create in Midjourney to build something new. And this is something that was not possible before when you had to actually go out and take a photo. I mean, just imagine how much time it would take you to create these ornaments and create a wreath like this and then photograph it from the top with the perfect lighting and everything. That's just, I mean, it's just massively long how that would take you so much time. And same thing with this. I mean, this is a very simplistic wedding card, I know, but just the speed at which I was able to do this is, I think, much faster than you could have done before. So I guess this concludes this installment of Watch Me Prompt with a slightly more pragmatic and practical approach for a very specific use case. I hope you found this useful. Maybe you also learned a thing or two about how to use Affinity Designer. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a comment, a like, and maybe subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys. Cheers.